Why do fighters keep mentioning GSP? I mean, it seems like they just can't stop, right? Everybody will say George's name, and George puts them all in the worst position. It's the worst position because George doesn't give anybody enough ammo to hate him. George's career is above reproach where you can't come out and say, I can beat him because I'm better at this than he is. You're going to look foolish. George also just won't go away. And if George is alive and still practicing the sport, it puts you in a tough position, even if you have a 12-pound gold belt around your waist to proclaim that you're the best in the world, when perception is, no, that guy is. that guy right over there in Toronto is. You're the champion, please. No disrespect. You are, of course, the champion. That guy over there is the best. And so it just puts you in this weird spot. And George does just enough. He just dangles something out just enough at just the right time, and everybody has to come and take a little bite of that carrot. And I do not blame them. And I would do the same thing. And if I was the champion and somebody questioned me being the best, oh, that would be infuriating. What do I do? I've done all of the hard work. I have the belt. The best is about who's the best today, whoever showed up today. Oh, we're going to do a tournament. We're going to call it a season. We're going to call it the playoffs. Okay, great. Who showed up in that period? Whose name is in the bracket? If your name's not in the bracket, you don't get to be mentioned. Unless you're George St. Pierre. So he's in this really rare spot. And some fighters will fully admit it. I want to fight that guy. And they'll even tell the truth. I want to fight that guy because he's perceived the best. Quite frankly, I think I'm the best, but I truly don't know. Because he is something special. For my own edification, let's do this thing. I'll live with the result, but I don't want to go through the rest of my life not knowing. Okay, you got me. That's a compelling answer to me. And it might just be the best answer because if you try to insult George's skills, you'll look silly. If you try to insult George's reign, it's just factually not correct. You're going to look silly. If you try to say, well, George was a jerk or George mistreated me somewhere. George said something to me on social media. No, he didn't. He didn't do any of those things. So you're put in this really tough spot. So I like the guys that come out and just take it from a very honest approach, which is I am king now, period. That includes that guy over there in Toronto. And if he wants to come in and I'm going to give him a piece. But I'm going to show you why I am the best. There's something to that just because it's honest and the truth will always set you free and there's no swerve you're going to be able to take. You're not going to be able to come out with enough money, enough cash at the barrel to get George to do something he doesn't want to do. George hasn't done anything George hasn't wanted to do in well over a decade, and that's not going to change in this lifetime. I'm sorry, George doesn't have a gambling problem. George is not a drug addict. He's not secretly on alcohol. He's just not that guy. George will do what George wants to do. But everybody wants to fight him, and you can pretend that you don't. Everybody wants to fight him. You could be you could be Francis Ngannou. You'll take the George St. Pierre fight today. Right now, without question. And people will tune in and George will elevate you. It's one of those things, and he's one of these guys, and he does just enough. And I don't believe that George comes with any level of strategy or recipe. I don't. I think George is one of these unintentional marketing geniuses, much like the Diaz brothers, who Nick skips a press conference and gets more press having an empty chair than had he shown up and done or said anything. It was unintentionally brilliant, and it worked to the highest of levels. You might even, when you want to talk about unintentional genius, you might have to throw Brock Lesnar in on that. You might. Brock Lesnar operates under the guise handed to him by Vince McMahon that monsters don't speak. Why does Paul Heyman come out, take the mic, and do all of Brock's talking while Brock just stands there? Because Vince McMahon believes monsters don't speak. Monsters create an idea and they create a fear. And that the speculation is more powerful than the reality, so allow people to speculate. Great. It worked. For sure. But that's not a recipe that you can duplicate and give to somebody else. That you would be very foolish if you were a young up-and-comer to go, I'm going to do what Brock did. I'm going to say nothing. Or I'm going to do what the Diaz boys did. I'm not even going to show up if I don't feel like it. I get where it worked. I get where they get an A+ for them. But I don't know if that's something printable and duplicable. that you should then be analyzing, studying, and planning to copy yourself. It seems like a pretty risky game, but George is also one of these guys who does just enough, which is very little, but he can get a whole lot of squeeze every time. George can come out and give a 10-minute interview here or there that'll be seen by 5 million people. In any other athlete within the space, if they want to be seen by 5 million people, is going to do 500 interviews. So it's one of these really unique things. And if you want to come after George, it just puts you in a tough spot of how. He never did anything. Okay, well, I'm going to attack his skills. Skills were better than anybody else to have ever done it. Okay, well, then I'm going to attack his legacy. His reign was longer than any champion of all time. Well, I'm going to come after him for not having courage. He changed weight classes, won a world championship. I mean, there's really nowhere you can go. But you're also up against it when perception is reality. If you've done the hard work and you've got the belt, and you competed with all of the people in the pool at that time, you did your job. And you do deserve the recognition and the pat on the back for being the best in the world in this time frame. That's all it's about. It's only about this time frame. Have I done everything that I could do in this time frame? If I did, crown me. If I didn't, talk to me. But George seems to butt his way into that. Even on accident, and he does it over 3 different weight classes. He threw himself into 55-pound mix. He took the welterweight crown and held on to that thing longer than anybody reasonably had the right to. Then he moved up to 185. I mean, it's a mess. And people can't quit talking about it. And they're never going to quit talking about him until he quits going to the gym, until he takes himself out of the sport. George is public domain. He's free reign. Go after him. I really hope one of you gets the fight. Once you get the fight, you two go figure it out. I'll sit back and enjoy it like everybody else. But there is something to the phenomenon, and the question that I will ask you right now: why can people not quit talking about George?